at westsidedecoratingcenter.com. Mike and the gang do a remarkable job over there. Anything from wallpaper and hardwood floors and anything you're going to need kind of for your home needs. As I've co-hosted this show or hosted the show for quite a while, I have become a regular visitor to Westside Decorating Center. So definitely go give them a visit when you're looking at your next home project. Their staff is kind, courteous, and happy to sell you a little bit of everything. So it's Matt Fallon filling in for Art Lewis this morning. And just kind of as that pre-heads up, you're going to have a lot of Matt Fallon this week. I will be live from the Dow Championship at the Midland Country Club Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're going to kind of chat all things Dow Championship those days. You're going to have Art with you tomorrow, also live from the Dow Championship. I know that he often brings in Jim Fitterling for the Dow Championship week, and that's going to take place tomorrow morning from the Midland Country Club. And then Art will be out tee announcing on hole 1, starting, I do believe he does the Pro-Am too, but he's out there Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and does a remarkable job kind of being the ultimate host to our visitors from across the world here at the Dow Championship. So looking forward to a great week. But Jonathan, Terry Henney's not here today. I'm going to need you to do something for me.
Oh?
Yeah, I am not tee announcing out on number 10 in 97-degree heat with this kind of humidity. Are we going to have this thing lowered by Thursday?
I think we can swing that. It might be a little wet, but
that's fine. I got a tent. I got an umbrella. I can live with that. That seems to happen every year. But can you imagine golfing in a professional tournament in this weather?
I can't imagine golfing in a professional tournament. So
that is totally fair. But it should be beautiful out there. Let's just. Through the years, we've gotten pretty lucky that the rain just kind of comes through at opportune times, or that at times, we've had many where it's kind of come through either late at night or early in the morning. So let's knock on wood and hope that happens. But as you guys know, when I host a show, we love to chat about the Great Lakes Bay region and things that are going on. And one of the most exciting things that we have happening right now is some job growth, and we're seeing it all across the region. We've seen new investment in kind of every corner and nook and cranny of the region. And there have been some instances where these are incredibly visible sites where you can tell, there's a whole lot of jobs going in there. And one of those is currently happening in Saginaw County, across from Hemlock Semiconductor, with our friends from New York at Corning. So this morning, excited to be joined by Carlo Scott, business director of that site that's being constructed here in Saginaw County. Good morning, Carlo.
Good morning, Matt.
So the first thing I have to ask, because this region gets confused, we do it all the time. We got used to for 70 years saying Dow Corning, Dow Corning, Dow Corning. We were home to Dow Corning, which was a joint venture between Dow here in Midland and Corning in New York, really working in the silicones industry. That partnership ended through a lot of the restructuring of Dow with the Dow-DuPont merger, the spins of Corteva, DuPont, Dow, etc. Dow absorbed kind of the silicones businesses that became, they bought the Corning out of that side. So now what had been legacy Dow Corning companies are now Dow companies as part of a material sciences company. But Corning, a very big company that exists in upstate New York and has been there for a long time, is back here in the region. But let's start there, Carlo. Can you tell our listeners exactly who Corning is? Because we screw up all the time. I do it. My staff does it. We can't help but to say Dow Corning after 70 years. So we apologize. I'm sure you hear it all the time. But for our listeners, who exactly is Corning?
So Corning's been around for 174 years. We're one of the oldest and one of the very few companies that were on the original Fortune 500 list that still remain today. Some of our first innovations were the glass envelope for Thomas Edison's light bulb. We've played major roles in inventing low-loss optical fiber, which now powers data centers and the internet and all the infrastructure we rely on. We helped create the ceramic substrate technology that's used in catalytic converters in response to the Clean Air Act in the 1970s. We helped invent LCD technology that's led to flat panel displays. And we've done a lot of other major innovations. If you have a smartphone, an iPhone, any of Samsung's phones, our glass is on the front and back of those, as well as in the display stack. And so Corning's an interesting company. We're primarily a glass and ceramic materials company, but we also have capabilities in optical physics. And so we're a materials company in sort of that subset of materials. Most people interact with probably 5 or 6 pieces of our technology every day, but they never realize it because we're on the material end and we sell to all the companies and brands of the devices that you buy. I'm glad you brought up Dow Corning. I do get that a lot when I'm going around the local area and I tell people that I work for Corning.
We can't help ourselves, man. It just,
but it's fair.
What you're
but
used
it's
to.
fair because back during World War II, Corning research scientists invented silicones, but because of the process needed to manufacture silicones being more of a chemical process, Corning did not have the know-how for how to do that. So that's why we came to Dow and partnered with them through that joint venture to actually industrialize our invention. And we're excited to be back in the area and to kind of build on that legacy. You mentioned the location of our new site across the street from Hemlock Semiconductor. That is the one asset from the former Dow Corning joint venture that Corning still owns. We own 80% of that company, and we're excited to expand across the street and deepen our presence here.
So, first of all, I am happy to know. It sounds like I'm talking to folks from Dow because they often say, you touch products from Dow all the time and don't know it. The silicones, are in iPhones as well, right? So Every time you pick up your smartphone, folks, you have both Dow product and you have Corning product and a lot of others. I'm just going to give you a big you're welcome. Between me and my kids, we've cracked many a screen so that we are doing everything we can to keep Corning in business as long as we can because we go through glass on iPhones a little bit more than we probably should. We just can't help ourselves, which was pretty funny. It seems like that's the one part of the iPhone. Like, I can get an iPhone and it can last me quite a while, but I'll go through that glass 2 or 3 times. Been known to accidentally on purpose drop my phone quite a bit. So here in the Great Lakes Bay region, you guys have a massive site across the street from Semiconductor. Tell us about what is happening at that site right now.
Yeah, so Hemlock Semiconductor is the only U.S. company that makes hyperpure polysilicon, right, which is the raw material that goes both into semiconductor chips as well as silicon-based photovoltaics, solar. So the predominant technology that you'll see in solar panels today is based on that technology platform. With the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the tax credits that the government created to try to reshore the solar supply chain in the United States, we've been able to leverage our position at Hemlock Semiconductor. It's providing the raw materials to go downstream into making components for the solar industry. So that's what we're going to be doing across the street. It's a huge investment. You'll see in press releases that have been sent out that we're investing about a total of $1.5 billion and creating about 1,500 jobs at that location. And it'll all be basically taking Hemlock Semiconductor's raw material and then converting it into components that can then be used by cell manufacturers and panel manufacturers downstream.
So I have to repeat this because I don't think the region fully grasps the magnitude of this project. $1.5 billion in investment. And that's just at the Corning site. Yeah. That doesn't take into account what HSC is doing to upgrade their plants, get plants that had been shut down back up and online, and then them potentially looking at increased production and investment via the CHIPS Act as well, which, again, why I bring this up, people hear HSC or Hemlock Semiconductor and they think it's a different company. It is not. It's 80% owned by Corning. So it's really just one giant Corning campus these days to a certain extent, correct?
It is to an extent, right? And so, obviously we're closely related. We own 80% of HSC. It is essentially, their materials will come across the street, we'll process them. And it is, this combination of employees at HSC and the new Corning facility across the street will create one of the largest manufacturing hubs for Corning in our entire global fleet of manufacturing. So it's a huge investment. Between the two sites, when we're done hiring, we'll be somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 employees. So it's a huge sort of campus that we're creating down there.
Yeah, so I want to ask one more question before we go to break. When you say components, I think a lot of us sometimes get confused. Give us an example of what you mean by you're going to be producing components. We hear that, and it sounds kind of generic. You're like, what does that mean exactly?
Right.
What will you be manufacturing there?
Right. So the solar value chain in this type of technology, it really starts with polysilicon, which is the raw material that Hemlock Semiconductor makes. The next step is you take that polysilicon, you melt it, and then you grow it into monocrystalline silicon ingots, and then you slice those into wafers. Those wafers then go to cell manufacturers who turn them into cells. They send them to module manufacturers who assemble those cells into modules or panels is what a lot of people call them. We're making wafers.
Got it. It's absolutely fascinating technology. It's cutting-edge technology that, again, folks, I remind you, isn't happening it is happening, but this isn't Silicon Valley we're talking about. This isn't the Triangle in North Carolina. This isn't Austin, Texas. This is the Great Lakes Bay region and in Saginaw County that this level of technology is taking place. This is a great discussion. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with Carlos Scott from Corning. Good morning and welcome back to the Art Lewis Show. This is not Art Lewis. It's Matt Fallon filling in. And I'm with Carlos Scott today from Corning, and we are chatting about their newest venture taking place here in the Great Lakes Bay region. And it's taking root across the street from Hemlock Semiconductor. So we've been talking about hyper-pure polysilicon, which even I think, Carlo, a lot of folks here don't fully understand. They're like, oh, we know the company's there, but a lot of times they don't fully understand exactly what it is. So when we say hyper-pure polysilicon, and I want to make sure I get it right, the purity of the product goes to point and then 13 nines, right? 99.99999 until you hit 13 nines, right? It is some of the cleanest product that you can possibly get. Why is that so important when you're talking about using that raw material that comes over now to Corning across the street to make these components in the solar industry? Can you explain why this product is so specific and why it has to be this pure, that they go through the process to get it to that level of purity, what it means in that solar industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important, probably even more so in the semiconductor industry. But what we're creating are, electronic devices, essentially, right? And so by removing all of the impurities in the raw material, you'll have much better electrical performance of the end product because you won't lose some of the conversion of, in our case, photons into electrons due to running into impurities. So it's extremely important. Hemlock Semiconductor, there are really only 3 companies in the world really that can do what Hemlock Semiconductor does on the semiconductor end. There are many more that are making solar grade product, but we do believe that having access to this really high-performing, high-quality material made at HSC will give us an advantage in terms of manufacturing yields and performance for our end customers.
So question for you, kind of knowing solar markets and the history of our region, I think that there was the hope years ago, even going back far as 20, 25 years ago, that this would have happened much sooner, that this region, because of semiconductor being there, because of the product being produced, that we would have had a much bigger role in the production of solar components, period. and that we would have been able to really see an American market emerge in solar. But it's really been held off for quite a long time with what's happening in China, India, and other places. Can you talk about why this is happening now after kind of those years where we thought, hey, this was going to happen? We've had a great company called Suniva, which is based in Georgia. They had come up to this area and built a facility. It was short-lived because of those markets. Why is the time now that this is going to be successful and that Corning's making this level of investment?
I think the reason it'll be successful now is that you actually have the government working hard to create a policy environment that creates a protected U.S. market to actually enable U.S. companies to compete in this industry. And they're doing that for a few reasons, and one, of course, being energy security. Mm-hmm. You don't want the supply chain for your major sources of energy to be overseas. And so the government started under the Biden administration with the Inflation Reduction Act, started putting tax credits in place to encourage and enable U.S. companies to compete with subsidized and artificially low foreign imports that are produced overseas. They've started erecting trade barriers through tariffs and other things. They have the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which, because of some ties within China of where they make their polysilicon, it's restricted a lot of the import of those materials into the U.S. And so I think the government has attempted to create the market conditions to enable the reshoring of the solar supply chain. You mentioned Suniva. Years ago, the U.S. 10, 15 years ago was independent for solar energy. The industry wasn't as big back then, but that all shifted overseas. And in order to compete, for U.S. companies to be able to compete in manufacturing these items, the government has to engage in industrial policy. So that's really the policies that the government has chosen to undertake is what's really created the opportunity.
So, Carlo, do you think this was almost the unintended positive consequences of COVID, that during that time when we had such supply chain shortages, chip shortages, other things, that the U.S. government said, whoa, we are in a bad spot, and this is showing that we're fragile in terms of some of the infrastructure in our economy and our ability to compete. We have got to manufacture this here. We have got to own this here. And so that these policies and laws were put in place to protect the industry, so let them grow. Did it almost, if COVID didn't occur, would have this changed?
That's sort of hard to say. I do think the situation created by COVID was a bit of a wake-up call, right? Especially for critical supply chains. I mean, we saw in Corning, one of our businesses at Corning is in pharmaceutical packaging. And so we played a major role in COVID in terms of trying to stand up vial production because a lot of that was overseas as well, right? And so I think where there are things that are very important, whether it's advanced semiconductor manufacturing, right? So they passed the CHIPS Act in part because of how important those items are to our aerospace and defense industry, as well as a lot of other products that we use, right? Life sciences and pharmaceutical packaging, and then I think energy as well. I think those all are areas where not just the U.S. but other countries and regions as well want to have resilient supply chains sort of locally. But then I also think there's some realities of the geopolitical situation where the U.S. government wants to make sure that these critical supply chains, if they can't be within the U.S., they're at least nearby or within sort of friendly countries. And so you're starting to see this idea of reshoring, but also friendshoring as well for some of these industries.
Yeah, and again, I go back to this, and it truly blows me away. We're talking about this happening right here in Saginaw County. And I want to make sure exactly what township is the plant in. So
that's a really good question, because the road, North Orr Road, that separates Hemlock Semiconductor from the new Corning Solar factory is the township line. And so we're in Richland Township. Hemlock Semiconductor's in Thomas Township. But, of course, we rely on sewer, like the wastewater treatment plant in Saginaw Township, and then we get our water ultimately from the city of Saginaw and then all the pipes go through Thomas Township. So it actually involves all of these municipalities are all working in concert and having to coordinate and work together to deliver the services that we need.
So you're going to offer the perfect transition. We come back. I want to talk about the site and what the site looks like. And I think even more importantly, jobs and what the jobs look like and what the hiring process looks like and where you guys are after these messages.
Hi, I'm Jen.
And I'm Kevin.
Semiconductor. So, Carla, let's jump into the site. So I've heard this. I got a chance to take a bus tour a couple months ago. And so we went on the HSC site and took the bus tour, and we drove around the Corning site. But someone used this statistic, and I'd love to hear the details to it. But they compared the amount of concrete used compared to the Hoover Dam. And they said that a quarter of the concrete used on that new Corning site, it's a quarter of the Hoover Dam's concrete. Which, if you know the history of the Hoover Dam and how much concrete was used in that thing, that's a lot of concrete. Is that true? And just tell us, how big is this site?
This site is enormous, and yes, that is true.
So how much concrete is a quarter of the Hoover Dam?
I don't have the exact tonnage of concrete, but what I will say is, some of our process equipment does have to sit on these sort of 10-foot by 10-foot cubic solid concrete foundations, right? And we have many of these machines, and so there is a lot of concrete, not just your typical, structural concrete, but also some of our process equipment has to sit on quite a bit of it. Our services are huge. We're going to be processing, 3 million gallons of water a day through our facility. We are using a large amount of electricity to power all of our equipment. Our facility itself is something like 1.2 million square feet. We're on an 80-acre plot of farmland that we purchased, and we're taking up most of that with the facility. So it is an enormous facility. This will be Corning's largest facility in the United States. And our third largest globally. So this is an enormous investment, an enormous site.
1.2 million square feet of manufacturing space.
That's correct. That's the enclosure of the building.
So when you guys decided that you're going to do this, was the infrastructure needed, or did our localities have to work hard to make sure that the sewer, electric, fiber, everything, clearly there's a ton of electricity because across the street at Semiconductor, it's the largest single source user of electricity in the state of Michigan in terms of one site. That's number one. It's not even close, right? So that there's a ton of power, but you're talking about 80 acres of farmland. I'm guessing needed quite a bit of work. What had to be done?
A lot had to be done. So, the site did not have sufficient water, did not have, access to the sewer system. Did not have enough electricity. So there was the larger distribution, obviously, of electricity is headed to the area because of Hemlock Semiconductor, as you noted. But Consumers Energy is having to build another substation just to supply our site, and so that's underway. But the townships, so I mentioned Richland Thomas, Saginaw Township, and the city of Saginaw have all been extremely supportive. They're all expanding their infrastructure or giving access to their infrastructure to make it happen. This obviously would not have been possible without the support of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, who provided grants to the townships to help facilitate some of this. They've improved the roads, so if you drive through that area, you'll notice that there's a lot newer paved roads there that are wider and capable of handling heavier equipment. And so none of that would have been possible without support of all of these municipalities working together. And I would be remiss if I didn't specifically show my appreciation for Joanne Crary and Saginaw Future, who really helped coordinate all of these activities with all the municipalities and help make it happen, as well as the support of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, who provided some tax breaks and other incentives directly to us, but also helped make money available to help these municipalities expand their infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought Joanne up, who recently retired, but is truly one of the best economic developers in the entire country. And again, folks, this is right here in the Great Lakes Bay region, the level of talent and people that we have. So is the site operational? Are we manufacturing yet?
We are not manufacturing yet, but we are getting close. And so we do anticipate that the first products will be flowing off the line sometime during the second half of this year. And we're almost done with the first half, so we're very close. We're hiring people, we're training people, we're getting ready to go. But construction's still ongoing, and we talked about how big the site is. We have over 1,800 contractors that are on the site today, working on all sorts of different things to get the facility up and running. And so, it's created a lot of opportunities for the skilled trades and the construction industry in the area. And then we've begun hiring and training the actual production workforce that will work in the facility, and we're adding more every week or being onboarded.
So, Carlo, if I'm not mistaken, the initial announcement was 1,100, but you added another 400 in the last month or so. So we've said about 1,500. How's it going so far on the hiring front?
So we are still actively hiring. We have made a lot of progress. So we've been very happy with the talent that's available, both the quality as well as the quantity. We are hoping, to hire. To continue hiring through the end of July. We have 3 major hiring events that will happen over the next little over a month, and so we're looking to hire into essentially a pool that will then draw from as we start up. And so the way that it works essentially is interested candidates would apply online. They then would be invited to come to one of our actual hiring events where they'll go through interviews, they'll go through, some tests to make sure that they're able to do certain jobs, right? So that we can make sure that we're funneling them towards the appropriate job within the facility, and then they'll be made an offer that day, and then we will reach out to them a few weeks before they're actually supposed to start and give them their start date. And so that's sort of the process that we've been going through. But we are still actively hiring, both for production workers as well as skilled trades positions, in particular maintenance technicians, millwrights, and electricians.
And so when you talk about these jobs, what does the wage look like? What's a range of wages for these jobs?
So it really depends what you're doing, right? But what I will say is that the lowest paid, lowest skilled, least experienced production worker in the facility will start out at $20 an hour, and those will go up. Some of our skilled trades people with lots of experience will be making up to like $47 an hour, and there's a lot of based on both what exact job that they're working in within the facility as well as their experience. And then there's opportunities for people to also fill leadership roles that will give them additional hourly compensation to help sort of run a subset of equipment or sort of oversee part of the process. And so we're very happy with the opportunities here. What we're really trying to do is create opportunities for people to have a career at the company so that they can grow both within their specialty at the plant, but also if they were to go, upskill into more skilled specialties during their time there, I think they'll have an opportunity to grow.
Really quickly, can you give that website right now so people that are hearing this, like, okay, now where do I go? What website do they go to for this?
So they should go to Corning's website, so corningjobs.corning.com. And they can also, probably the easiest way to find it is just go to Google and type in Corning jobs in Hemlock, Michigan, and that we have a dedicated sub-site with all of our job postings for Michigan that they'll check out. I'll also, after this, I can send you an email with a flyer that has like a QR code, and we can distribute that, and people can just scan that QR code. It'll take them right to that Michigan website.
Outstanding. Well, we're going to be back here in a few seconds with Carlo Scott from Corning.
The Rubble.
A lot of local stakeholders through different events. I mentioned Saginaw Future before. I mentioned a lot of the municipalities. And one thing I've noticed is how welcoming everyone's been, right? And how much people seem to care about this region. It seems like an extremely friendly place to raise a family. So we're very excited. There seem to be a lot of activities and different things for the kids to do. And so my wife and I both felt, when Corning asked us to move out here, we jumped in with both feet and are excited to become part of the community.
So you're in the Navy, and you're going to live here in the Great Lakes Bay region. Does that mean you're going to buy a boat? You can get a boat and enjoy the Great Lakes Bay yourself?
So I did go to the Naval